Hey guys, News here. So today I'm going to be doing a video on the unused executions of Danganronpa 1. I decided to split it up into two videos instead of putting it in just like one top list because I wanted to talk about all of them since I'm sure there's some of you out there that haven't seen all of them yet, and I wanted to make it into a top list because, well, top lists are fun, in my opinion at least. So with that being said, I will be talking about all of the unused executions of the Danganronpa 1 characters, and I'll be ordering them in my personal preference, 1 being my favorite and 10 of course being my least favorite. Although I will say I don't really dislike any of these, there's just some of them I find like a bit odd thematically. Also with ordering these, some are based on more like analytical or deep reasons and others are just like completely my personal preference. I will try to add something of value with each number, but a lot of this really is just my opinion, so keep that in mind. And as always, feel free to list your favorites in the comment section below as well. But without further ado, let's go ahead and begin. So as some of you guys may know, the unused executions are basically alternate or what if situations. These execution summaries are included in the Danganronpa fan books, and although there is no official art for these executions, the popular Pixiv user Orima has done their own renditions for a majority of these executions, which I'll be using in the video. If you'd like to check out the rest of their work, I will link their Pixiv account in the description below. But let's go ahead and move on into the list. Number 9 on this list is Yamada's execution. And it can be noted that his execution is the only one that's not in the game that still has an official art source, which is from the Danganronpa 1 demo manga. The demo manga mirrors the actual demo of the first game in the way that Hagakure is the first victim, but of course in the manga you actually get a blackened, and it so happens to be Yamada. It's called Watch Out Buko Great Monster Invasion. The execution is described as a gigantic Princess Buko comes flying to a place where enormous Monokuma is riding at. Both start fighting. Yamada, who is stuck between them, is being hit from both sides. At the end, he dies when being hit by a certain kill beam from both simultaneously. Like I said before, I don't really dislike any of the executions. There's just some of them, like this one, that I find a bit odd or I'm not super crazy about compared to a lot of the others. I've never been a very big fan of Yamada though, so I'm probably biased by putting this as the last one. But I felt like Leon's execution was a way better way to kick off the game and emphasize the severity of the killing game and the situation that they're all in. So I'm really happy that Leon was the first executed and not Yamada, just because I feel like this execution wouldn't have been nearly as impactful. And I don't think I would have been nearly as excited for the game when I saw it as I was when I saw Leon's execution. Next up on the list is Sakura's execution, and it is called Deciding Match of the Whole Galaxy. Sakura is standing in a wasteland. An army of aliens appear and surround her, manipulating the atmosphere. Even though Sakura successfully defeats them one after the other, the enemies don't stop appearing. Eventually it becomes too cramped and she dies by the pressure of being buried in their bodies. So if you keep up with my channel, you probably know that I really love Sakura. Honestly, really think she should have been a survivor over Hagakure, and the low placement on this list has nothing to do with me disliking her as a character. I really don't have much of an opinion on the execution. I just kind of find the alien part to be a bit odd thematically. The whole scenario reminds me a lot of Pekka's execution in a way that we could see her martial arts skills really in action, which I think it would be really cool to see that again because we get a small glimpse of it in the game and in Danganronpa 1 the animation, especially since you get to see a little bit more of a fight sequence. But since she would be taking on a whole army, I feel like we could really see her skills in this and it would be really interesting. Again, the only downside is I'm not really sure I understand the alien choice or the her being buried alive choice. I sort of assumed that she would get an execution that would match, maybe more so about Kenshiro or her family, or something that just more obviously relates to her past. But that's just my opinion on it. Next up is Tagami's execution. The title is Human Disqualification. Byakuya would have been dropped in a garbage can, which would fall into a place that looks like hell. Monokuma, dressed like an elementary student, would repeatedly throw stones at him for supposedly being a dirty hobo. Tagami would try to escape, but he would have come out in a cold and snowy place and eventually die from his wounds wounds and hypothermia. But I actually do like this execution because I do feel like it has more symbolism regarding his character than some of the other ones. Although I don't remember anything about elementary school being very important in Tagami's life or regarding his past, unless I'm wrong. Feel free to correct me if I am. But I do think the part about the dirty hobo could probably refer to his fear of being a failure, since in his free time events he does mention that in his family, the head of the family actually couples with several different women and creates many different heirs, all with different mothers, and that these heirs have to battle in order to become the successor. He states that they were 15 at the time of his battle, and that if you don't become the winner of this, then that you are exiled from the family, and that this outcome is just as bad as facing death. So to me, in this execution, showing hell and him being a hobo there could symbolize the outcome of him potentially losing that battle and being exiled from his family, and how essentially being this hobo or this failure in his eyes is equal to death. Or I could be entirely overthinking this whole thing, but that's what I got out of it. Next up is Asahina's, and her execution is called Water Illusion Show. Asahina is put in a water tank. From above, Monokuma, dressed as a magician, appears and waves his staff. A curtain falls, raising again with a drum roll. Many sharks can be seen in the tank surrounding Asahina. Once again, Monokuma waves his staff and the curtain falls. As the drum rolls and the curtain rises, she isn't in the tank anymore because she had been eaten by sharks. I like this execution as well, and honestly, I don't have like a whole lot to say about it, but I think it is a really good execution based off of the theme of her talent, and I feel like I have sort of a bias to prefer the executions that are a bit more realistic, and I know none of them are really realistic, but more realistic compared to Uwada's execution where he got turned into butter. So I prefer it more so because of that as well. Next up is Yasuhiro Hagakure's execution, which is called Quiz Time. I heard there's a chance of 30%. Hagakure is a contestant on a quiz show set. Before him there are 3 doors labeled A, B, and C. There is a 1 in 3 probability that one is an execution. Hagakure tries to enter the A door, the door grows hands and feet and escapes. B does the same thing. The only door left is C. He isn't willing and a mouth appears on the door and eats him. I really like this execution as well, but similarly to the Asahina one, I don't have like too much to say about it. I honestly just really liked how the execution mirrored his talent in the way that he has a 30% correction rate, while in this he has a 30% chance of running into an execution. So I honestly just thought that aspect of it was really cool and creative. Next up is Chihiro Fujisaki's Unused execution, which is Super Fujisaki Bros. It's described as Fujisaki is put inside an 8-bit side-scrolling game. A group of huge pixelated Monokumas would appear behind him as he tries to run. Eventually, they would catch up to him, causing Fujisaki's sprite to pop out of existence. Honestly, I really love this execution, and although I am usually more biased towards the realistic ones, I still just absolutely adore this one. I love the Super Mario Bros. Reference, and I just felt like overall this would have been a really creative and cool execution to see in full animated action. Although I am really happy that Fujisaki never actually killed anyone because he's just so sweet, I couldn't even imagine it. Next up is Fukawa's execution, and it is called First Kiss Prank. Toko is thrown into complete darkness. In the distance, Byakuya can be seen, so she begins to run towards him. Suddenly, a huge roller appears between the two of them. Though Toko tries desperately to escape, the roller catches up with her and presses her paper thin, killing her. I've always really loved this execution, and I think the imagery is really cool, and I'm not sure if it's supposed to be like a vision of Byakuya or if it's actually supposed to be him, but I like to imagine it's actually him watching from the sidelines as she's going through the execution, and that if this was to happen, you would see that wall between the remaining survivors and the Blackens sort of break. When playing the game, to me, it always felt like the executions were sort of like this separate entity from the rest of the story, so I always really loved seeing the other characters' reactions to the execution or seeing interactions with the other characters in the execution because it made it feel all the more real to me. And I really like this execution because I could really see that sort of wall breaking and these types of interactions happening with her and Tagami. And honestly, the rest rest of the characters' reactions to it as well. Number 2 on this list is Mizuno's execution. Her execution is called Sayaka Mizuno's Final Performance. It's described as Sayaka is placed on a stage with the form of a giant bear trap along its edge. She is required to sing in order to fill the score meter until it's full. However, just as the meter is about to reach the highest score, Monokuma destroys it, triggering the failure condition. This causes the giant bear trap to slam shut, killing Mizuno instantly. I just think the imagery is really cool in it, and the struggle you can imagine as Mizuno tries to sing for her life would have been really creepy and honestly kind of cool to see, in my opinion. And to see her killed as the star she had worked so hard to become is very fitting for her, and I think it could be very emotionally impactful as well. And the number 1 execution on this list is Kiyotaka Ishimaru's execution, which is called Prime Minister Kiyotaka Ishimaru's Inaugural Parade. Kiyotaka sits on a vehicle and answers people's cheers in the middle of a huge, gorgeous parade. The crowd has posters that says things such as "Hooray for Prime Minister Ishimaru." In the next moment, Monokuma pops up resembling Galgo 13, a fictional assassin, and kills him with a shot through the heart. This execution is definitely by far my favorite out of the unused ones from the first game, and although I do love this execution, I'm very happy that Ishimaru never actually killed anyone. I really can't imagine him being a killer unless it was an accident or a setup, and honestly, if that happened, it would have broken my heart, so I'm really happy it didn't happen. But with all that aside, I really do love this unused execution, and the main thing I love about this is how closely it relates to his free time events and how it highlights his insecurities before his death. So in Ishimaru's free time events, he talks about how he believes one must work hard to accomplish goals, and that being called a genius is an insult because he believes that they are lazy people that don't deserve what they get, mostly because his grandfather, who was called a genius, was at one point the Prime Minister of Japan. But he was also caught in a huge scandal that shamed and cost his family a ton of money to this very day. So seeing Ishimaru get executed in a way that resembles the life of his grandfather, who he is very offended by and is very offended to be called a genius or anything resembling his grandfather, and whose mistakes are the prime reason as to why he acts the way he does, was really impactful and a really good creative choice. Also, this execution actually has a full fan animated version to it as well, so if you would like to watch that version, I will link it down below. But that will conclude the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm sorry it took so long to get out. I had a lot of technical difficulties while trying to make this video. Was also moving into my new apartment while making it, and I think that sort of halted it a good bit. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. I am sort of more settled now into my own place, and my schedule is a lot better this month than it has been like for the past 6 months, so I'm hoping that means I'll be able to upload more to the channel and do live streams again as well, and post more than 3 videos a month. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. Feel free to leave your favorite unused executions in the comment section below, and I will see you guys real soon.
Subscribe to Weeby News for more hope-filled videos.